Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Linux and open source news show. This week we've got Valve and Arch Linux signing sort of a partnership that might look small on the surface but is actually pretty deep and might mean big things for Valve, Proton, and SteamOS. We also have Nintendo bullying another Nintendo Switch emulator into closing shop. This time it's Ryujin X. And we also have the release of Thunderbird for Android. We've got Mint spending more time and polish for distributions that ship Cinnamon without the Mint theme, and a bunch of other things. And as always, we also have a message from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by SquareSpace, your all-in-one platform to create, publish, and manage your own website. Squarespace has really easy tools to make sure anyone can end up with a nice-looking, well-optimized website, no matter if you know how to code or not. Squarespace has what they call their blueprint system, which lets you pick from a variety of templates that are pre-built and will suit any type of website. And they even have the SEO tools you need to make sure your website doesn't end up in the last page of Google's search results. To go further, Squarespace has their own design engine to create your own pages. You can just drag and drop elements where you want them, and you can change the colors, the fonts, and just tweak the template however you want. And then you can add some extra features like creating your own online shop with a complete payment system. You can design your own logo from Squarespace, book your own domain name. So click the link in the description below to give Squarespace a shot, and you'll even get 10% off your first domain or website purchase. So, Valve and Arch Linux have announced that they will deepen their collaboration. You might know that SteamOS uses Arch as its base, even though it's not really Arch Linux that they ship. But in the Arch developer mailing list, the Arch Linux lead said that they are now entering direct collaboration with Valve, as the company now provides backing for a build service infrastructure and for a secure signing enclave. Valve will support work on these two areas on a freelance basis, so presumably they will be paying contract developers to implement those things, but they won't be hiring people for the long run. Both these projects are just funded by Valve, but they will follow the usual Arch Linux decision process. They're still under the control of Arch. Now, why these projects are important? It's because right now, on Arch, building packages still requires some manual work. You need to manually start the build of the package, and once the build is done, you need to sign these packages manually as well with your own packager signing key. There's no generic Arch Linux key that signs all the packages. This means that if Arch ever had to support more architectures than x86 and the few others that they have, I think they have ARM64 support right now, they would have to multiply the steps, and this would make it pretty hard, if not impossible, to manage. Arch just doesn't have the resources to do all of that manual work for plenty of different architectures. Now, with a central build service, they would get rid of these manual steps, meaning that Arch could build packages automatically for more architectures. And the secure signing enclave would let these packages be signed by a unique Arch Linux key instead of each packager's own personal one, which would also remove another manual step. Now, this is interesting for a few reasons. First, if Valve funds these sort of long-term build infrastructure projects, it means that they're with Arch Linux for the long run. They're basically hiring people to fix the things that are annoying them when they're trying to build SteamOS. But second, if you combine that with the fact that recent leaks showed that Valve is actually testing implementing x86 to ARM emulation inside of Proton, and also potentially implementing Android support inside of Proton directly, if you add that to the rumors that Valve is presumably working on an ARM-based VR headset, and now they're funding projects that would let build Arch packages for more infrastructures more easily, which means SteamOS could be easier to build for more infrastructures more easily, and you have a wide range of possibilities. But you could also start imagining that what they actually want is to have Proton as a form of complete layer that developers could target. Instead of targeting Windows or macOS or Linux or the Steam Deck, they could just target Proton when they develop their game, and they would thus have support for ARM and x86 through the compatibility layer. They would support Windows and the Steam Deck at the same time, maybe even macOS if at that point Proton comes to macOS. They would also potentially support Android if that comes to Proton. And all of this work starts making a lot of sense in terms of Valve would own the platform that developers target to build their games, instead of just owning one device and one OS that can run these games. So it could mean some pretty big things, or it could just be that they want easier to build SteamOS. We don't know yet. Now, this week, another emulator has been taken off the back and shot by Nintendo. After Yuzu was lawyered and bullied off of the internet, Ryujin X also was this week. Their downloads page doesn't exist anymore, their GitHub repo is gone at the time I'm recording this, and the explanation is simple. It was given straight up by one of their developers on Discord and Twitter. Nintendo talked to the lead dev of the project, nicknamed GTK-chan, and they were offered an agreement to stop working on that project and to delete it entirely. There is no confirmation that this person accepted, but since everything is gone, it is likely the case. Now, this is pretty bad news because after the Yuzu incident, where Yuzu got demolished, people turned to Ryujin as the emulator of choice. And it was supposed to be pretty safe. It was rumored to be developed in Brazil, where emulation is generally considered a bit more legal than elsewhere. It's not the usual gray area that other countries have around emulation. Also, Nintendo had not really attacked Ryujin, even though they really scoured the internet to get rid of Yuzu, so people sort of expected Ryujin to be okay. Now, as always, the code will live on. It will be shared by tons of people. There will be forks popping up everywhere because this always happens. But as soon as one of these forks starts getting some visibility or a YouTuber starts talking about it, it's gonna get killed just like Ryujin X was. So Nintendo is generally very unfriendly towards people's efforts to showcase their games or play them in a way that isn't officially supported. They regularly harass or copyright claim videos that show their games running on emulators, or just show their games, period, if you're not part of their pretty unfair program for making YouTube videos about Nintendo games. They're the last company to behave like this. Everyone else has understood that free publicity is always good, and that if you leave just a little freedom to users, they really will like you a bit more for this, and they won't be as annoyed. Right now, Nintendo is just damaging their image again and again with these efforts and these lawyering ops, but I'm not running the company. Maybe it's working out for them. I just think that it's really, really anachronistic to do this kind of stuff in 2024. Now, as promised, Linux Mint developers have been hard at work trying to improve Cinnamon's default theme, as in not the Linux Mint theme, but the theme that Cinnamon comes with when it's shipped on other distributions than Linux Mint. So this theme gained rounded corners, which is either really nice or really bad, depending on what you prefer. The theme is now darker and more contrasted. Dialogues have been redesigned to have separate buttons. The force quit pop-up that happens when a window is frozen is now styled in the same way as the rest of the system dialogues. The on-screen display elements like volume or brightness changes now use a more modern, simpler design that obscures less of the screen, as does the workspace switching on-screen display. Other areas of focus before the end of year are notifications, various animations, the main Cinnamon menu, logout dialogues, and password prompts, and more. So it should affect pretty much the entire look of the desktop, and some of these changes will likely also make it to Mint proper with its own minty theme. Other Mint-related news include their transition to apt-kit, which is their own wrapper or replacement for all the usual apt-based packaging tools. This transition is apparently now complete, and all of Mint's projects will rely on this new stack instead of the older apt tools. And the benefits of this transition apparently include putting a stop to translation problems that appeared in these other tools, the ability to fix various bugs and paper cuts on their own tools instead of being stuck with issues that no one really wants to deal with, And also, last benefit, they will control those projects so they can remove what they don't need and they can add what they do need. In practice, this means that the update manager for Mint has been pretty much refactored from the ground up. It's now properly multi-threaded, it is more resilient to dependency problems, to various errors, translations are better, it's just a better tool. And Mint is sort of the last user-facing distro, as in really end-user, beginner-friendly distribution that still relies heavily and wants to promote Debian packages. There's Debian, of course, but they are not that popular for beginners or just regular normal desktop users compared to Linux Mint, as far as I can tell. So it's nice that Mint, as the last champion for Deb packages, is still pushing them and trying to improve the tools around it. Now this one isn't necessarily Linux related, but Linux adjacent. FreeBSD is getting some investment from AMD and Framework and Dell to make the system better on laptops. Presumably specifically laptops from Dell and Framework, but that kind of work tends to benefit everyone in general. So this is $750,000 US in terms of investment. This is not enormous for Dell or AMD, but it could mean a lot of money for Framework, because it's still a pretty small company, and for the FreeBSD project, it's definitely not a ridiculous amount. This money will serve to improve Wi-Fi and Bluetooth support on FreeBSD. It will serve to improve power management with better S2 idle or S0ix support. Better graphics driver support will come as well for Intel and AMD GPUs. Better audio support is planned, and also support for various laptop-specific hardware, stuff like going to sleep when you're closing the laptop lid, specific buttons that laptop might have, touchpads, ports, and various weird port layouts that laptops have, and other things like that. FreeBSD will also receive better support for handling hybrid CPUs that have performance cores and efficiency cores, which is virtually every new CPU right now. I'm not sure what the plan is for Dell, Framework, or AMD to invest in FreeBSD. They probably just want another alternative to Windows. Of course, Linux is right here, and a lot of distros would really have liked this kind of investment, and Linux is admittedly more advanced on laptop support than FreeBSD, but also apparently, according to some of my patrons that I talked to on the daily news show that you can get with a link in the description, well, FreeBSD is a lot more popular than I thought in the enterprise context, so maybe making it better for everyone is a good plan. Nothing against FreeBSD, I'm really happy to see them getting a lot of investment, and honestly, Linux already runs really well on laptops these days, so FreeBSD needs the money more, so cool for them. Now, after about a year or year and a half of talking about K9 Mail on Android becoming Thunderbird for Android, they are now calling for testers for the first beta of this app. The beta is actually out, and obviously it has bugs, and they need the community's help to test things out and iron out these bugs. The plan is to have a first release candidate on the 3rd week of October and the final release at the end of October, which is a very ambitious plan, but also they've been testing this thing extensively while it was still called K9 Mail, so it's not like it's a brand new project written from scratch. The beta is available from the Play Store or on GitHub, and they're preparing F-Droid builds, which should arrive soon as well. They also published a testing checklist with important things to look at. They also have a K9 Mail to Thunderbird transfer tool, and they will also have a tool to transfer Thunderbird desktop information into the Thunderbird mobile app, which is really nice, but that won't come until later. Now, it is nice to see a first version of this application finally releasing, because it's been a long while since they started talking about it. There was no rush, but having it is pretty cool. And they have a lot of other features that they want to work on for this thing, including, as I mentioned, the ability to transfer information and sync a lot of stuff from your accounts in Thunderbird Desktop to the mobile app. There's also an iOS app being worked on, but it's presumably way farther away because, well, they're presumably writing it from scratch compared to starting with K9 Mail as their base for Android. And this week we also saw the release of the Unified Linux Wine Game Launcher, or UMU, or UWU maybe. This is a project from Thomas Kreider, also known as Glorious Eggroll, the person behind GE Proton. And this thing is basically a re-implementation of the Steam runtime tools and the Steam runtime itself that can be used outside of Steam, meaning any launcher or any game can ship with that thing and run just as well as it would on Steam, using the official version of Proton or GE Proton or any other fork of Proton. This would likely replace custom versions of Wine and Proton that are used in Lutris or in the Heroic Games launcher or in Bottles, and this would reduce work duplication and also make sure that games run pretty much the exact same way, whatever the platform you're playing them on. It's an important project because it takes all the work Valve did to make sure that games run well on Linux and it ports it to any other tool that isn't Steam, which is very cool. It means that people have more choice and have the exact same compatibility, and it also probably frees up a lot of time for Lutris developers or Heroic Games developers to not really have to work that much on a specific version of Wine or Proton that works sort of well for their tool. They can just rely on this thing and have the best compatibility possible outside of Steam, which is nice. And if you want the best compatibility possible with Linux on your hardware, there's always our sponsor, Tuxedo Computers. You all know about them by now. I've been talking about them at the end of my videos for more than 2 years, which shows how dedicated I am to showcasing their products. They're really good. They're computers that ship with Linux out of the box. Laptops, desktops, you decide. They have a wide range of devices. You can configure most of the components inside. You can have your own custom keyboard layout, your own logo laser etched on your laptop, and they will basically fit every price point and every need. And you know that their computers run Linux really well because that's the point of the entire thing. I only use their devices these days. My entire channel, my podcast, my videos, everything is run from one of their laptops, and all my gaming needs are served from one of their desktops. So if you need a new computer, you need to run Linux on it, and you want to support a company that actively contributes to Linux support for hardware, click the link in the description below and get yourself something from Tuxedo. They're really, really good. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. You know what to do to make the channel grow and the videos more popular. There's all the usual YouTube buttons, as always, that you can click to make sure that things turn out well for me and for this channel. And if you really enjoy the channel and you want to support it financially, there are links in the description to do just that. Starting from $1 per month, you can get a daily version of this show in audio format from Monday to Friday, 5 to 10 minutes. It's great. A lot of people seem to be enjoying it, so check that out as well. In the meantime, thank you all for watching, and I guess you will see me in the next one next week. Bye!